And as soon as we get those words up there, we'll be ready to go. Got the words coming. We're just going to vamp here till those words show up. Are they coming, Miss Mary? Well, we're going to start. When I listen, I see clearly. When I listen, I know. When I listen, I find perfect peace. When I listen to the voice of Spirit in me. When I listen, I see clearly. When I listen, I know. When I listen, I find perfect peace. When I listen to the voice of Spirit in me. And teaching. When I listen, I see clearly. When I listen, I know. When I listen, I find perfect peace. When I listen to the voice of Spirit in me. One more key change. When I listen, I see clearly. When I listen, I know. When I listen, I find perfect peace. When I listen to the voice of Spirit in me. When I listen to the voice of Spirit in me. When I listen to the voice of Spirit in me. All right, I'd like to introduce our musicians to you this morning. We have our wonderful band, Ed Cusby on guitar, Bill Dixon on bass, David Page on drums. Our song leaders are the wonderful Wade and Kimberly Wooldridge. And our soloist today is so glad to have her back with us, Melissa Suzanne. And now it's time for you to stand and join us on another sing-along song, reggae style, this morning. No Mozart. I can see clearly now. I can see clearly now the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's gonna be a bright, 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 sunshiny day. It's gonna be a bright, 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 sunshiny day. I think I can make it now, the rain is gone. All of the bad feelings have disappeared. Here is that rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be a bright, 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 sunshiny day. Look all around, there's nothing but blue skies. Look straight ahead, nothing but blue skies. Time to meet and greet your neighbor. Go say hello, good morning, how are ya? And get ready to sing. We've got one more go round to do. And here we go. I can see clearly now the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's gonna be a bright, 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 sunshiny day. It's gonna be a bright, 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 sunshiny day. Two more of those. It's gonna be a bright, 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 sunshiny day.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our center this morning and to our service. So glad to be sharing it with each of you. My name is Patty Mercado. I'm one of your assistant ministers, and it's my pleasure to be here this morning to welcome us and to remind us of who we are, a center for spiritual living, a place where we come into our center, where we remember that we are spiritual beings, and we get to do this in such glorious and wondrous ways on Sunday mornings. So welcome, welcome. And we're going to begin with lighting the flames of faith. We perform this ceremony to promote the universal consciousness of life, which acknowledges that all peoples and all faiths, all sentient beings, come from the one great universal presence, which we call spirit. Fundamental to this truth is the unifying nature of all religious thought and experience, which we honor here today. We light the candle for the Tao, honoring the universal path of harmony and equilibrium, the natural way. We light the candle for the shamanic traditions, honoring the beliefs and practices of all indigenous peoples, the way of primal spirituality. We light the candle for Hinduism, honoring the path of knowledge, action, and devotion. We light the candle for Judaism, honoring the ethical path of living by sacred law. We light the candle for all forms of Buddhism, honoring the Four Noble Truths and the path of compassion. We light the candle for all forms of Christianity, honoring the Christ consciousness as the path of love. We light the candle for all forms of Islam, honoring the path of compliance with the will of God as the highest calling. We light the candle for the universalistic religion of Baha'i, honoring the path of unity and peace. We light the candle for all forms of New Thought, honoring the metaphysical path of mental healing through the practice of universal spiritual principles. And as Anita Baroldi, our practitioner, lights the last candle, let it represent the path that brought you here this morning. And please join with me in an opening affirmative prayer. And here in this holy and sacred moment of now, recognizing the infinite, known by many names, love, beauty, Christ, God, Spirit, that infinite and indwelling presence, the source of all, that which is knowing itself and revealing itself out of its own self-awareness, its own self-givingness, the only activity of life, love knowing itself, truth being revealed. And so I know that the divine activity of life is joy, it is creative, and it is constant. And I know that it is right here, right now, being made known. I know that it is the essence of all of us. It is the essence of this service. It is the essence of life. And so I know and declare that this service is a joyful activity of love. It is a spiritual experience of each one of us knowing ourselves and revealing ourselves in a greater way. That divinity that is God within, that divinity that is love within. And so as we come together in joyful celebration this morning, I know that each one of us is open and receptive. Each one of us has already brought ourselves forth. And by our own declaration, have opened our hearts and opened our minds to a greater awareness, to a greater experience and a greater acceptance of that truth that is indwelling in all life. And so I'm so grateful and thankful to know this. I'm so grateful to share it and experience it with each one who is here. And I am so grateful for the activity of life that brings a smile to my face and uplifts each one of us. And so with my heart filled with gratitude and joy, I simply rejoice. I let go, and please know with me this truth. And so it is. And our practitioner is Aidan Greeny, and he is coming up for our affirmation.
Good morning. So the practice is I say it once and then we all say it together. Today, I move into a glorious way of being that embodies and exemplifies beauty, grace, compassion, and joy. And so it is. Today, I move into a glorious way of being that embodies and exemplifies beauty, grace, compassion, and joy. And so it is. And thank you.
Thank you, Aidan. And please welcome Melissa Suzanne.
The song is called Be the Peace. Yeah, yeah. When you open the door for somebody else, but they don't thank you for helping them out, just keep a smile upon your face. They might be going through some pain, and instead of being angry inside, now listen to this part. We say, be the peace you want to see in the world. Sing it with me. Be the peace you want to see in the world. Yeah, yeah. All right, let's pick it up just a little bit, guys. Feel free to clap along, too. You've been working hard for what you made, but somebody comes along and takes your place. Just keep a smile and let it all go. There might be something that you don't know, and instead of being angry inside, we sing together, just be the peace you want to see in the world. One more time. Be the peace you want to see in the world. Yeah. And we can just go on complaining about what's wrong. But if you want to see a change, then why not start with you today? Starting right now. Yeah, you sing right now. We're starting right now. You sing right now. We're gonna be the peace. You sing right now. Oh, you and me. Yeah, right now. All over the world. Right now. Every boy and girl. Right now. Yes, we're starting today. Right now, what you gonna say? Last time together. Right now, we're gonna be the peace we wanna see in the world. Let me hear you. Be the peace we wanna see in the world. Be the love. Be the love you wanna see in the world. Joy. Be the joy you want to see in the world. Change. Be the change we want to see in the world. Thank you so much for singing on that song with me.
Melissa Suzanne, thank you so much. And please welcome Reverend Heather Dawn Clark.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Melissa. It's so good to hear you singing again. How wonderful. So my topic this morning is prejudice and sin. It's actually what is our take on prejudice and sin. And I want to start with something funny. So that is a heads up that this is trying to be a joke. Trying to express through me. So a priest was had an appointment, came up in the afternoon, and he thought, but he was supposed to be on confessional. So he thought, well, maybe the rabbi wouldn't mind coming and sitting for me. So he went next door where the rabbi was and said, you could do this. Would you just come and sit? They don't see you anyway. And he said, well, rabbi said, I don't know what to do. He said, well, come watch for a couple of times and you'll catch on. So the first person came in and said to the priest, forgive me, Father, I've sinned. What is your sin, my dear? I committed adultery. How many times did you commit it, says the priest. 3 times, says the woman. He says, well, do 10 Hail Marys and put $5 in the box. And so she left, and then the next person came in. It was a guy, and same thing. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. And what is your sin, sir, young man? And he said, I've committed adultery. How many times have you committed adultery? 3 times. So, okay. So same thing, put $5 in the box, do 10 Hail Marys, and you are forgiven. Okay, so the rabbi says, I think I've got it. I think I'll be fine. So go ahead and go to your appointment. So the next person comes in and says, forgive me, Father, I've sinned. What is your sin? He says, adultery. How often did you commit adultery? 1 time. The rabbi says, go out, do it twice more, come back, put $5 in the box and 10 Hail Marys. We've got a special on this week. Well, I got it, mostly. So the thing is that those of us who were brought up in other religions know that there are seven mortal sins that you are thrown into the pit of fear about, because in a mortal sin, you're going to have your soul burn for eternity. And my friend Chris told me he was raised Catholic, and at 7 years old, his classmates were told that if they stole anything that was worth more than $5, that was a mortal sin. If it was under $5, it was not. I mean, I don't know who makes up these rules, but anyway, so you can imagine this 7-year-old's mind. So he saw a cap gun and in this store, and he thought, $4.99, he could get away with it. So he 5-figure discounts this cap gun, and he goes and then buys caps for the stolen gun. And he's having such a great time. I could just imagine him shooting up the place and, you know, having fun with his cap gun. And his friend says, he tells his friend where he got the gun. His friend says, oh no, you forgot about the tax. With tax, it would be more than $5. So then, what is he going to do? He didn't want to burn in hell for eternity. So he takes the used gun back and puts it back. So it's now for sale again. Therefore, now he is completely free of any guilt or consequence of this sin. I think it was a pretty brilliant solution for a 7-year-old. And if I were a judgmental person, I would be judging those priests for terrifying 7-year-olds. For terrifying 7-year-olds, for what purpose? Made in the image and likeness of the divine, each one of us, at every age, no matter what we've done, what we haven't done, what we've said, how many sins we've committed in this moment, innocent, completely, wholly innocent, free from any kind of consequences except the natural consequences that our thinking brings us. So Ernest Holmes is very clear, we're not punished for our sins, but by them. What simply means is that there's a consequence to our thinking that produces results. And those results are sometimes very, very painful. And if we don't want those results, there's a simple solution. It begins with the word change. What is it? Change your what? Change your thinking, change your life. Ernest said that with every radio show that he did. Change your thinking, change your life. He also said there's a power for good in the universe and you can use it. But even greater than that is there's a power for good in the universe and it is using you. It is using you to be the change you want to see in the world. It is using you to be love. It is using you to use your mind in healthy-minded ways that see that we're connected with all life, all beings, every person. We're connected to all. So, sin, there's no sin but a mistake. It's only a mistake. In fact, that when I was first studying science of mind, our teacher said, you know, it's an archery term. It just means to miss the mark. When you miss the mark. So when we've missed the mark, we have sinned. One of my dear friends, Jeffrey Proctor, used to say, if you don't do what I say, you're going to go straight to hell. And he's a metaphysician. But he knows, and many of you already know this, hell isn't a place you're going to go at a greater later. Many of us have been there. Many of us have been there, and it's not a nice place. So we can change our thinking and have a different experience. We can see our oneness with each other, with all life, and thereby live a life of joy, of beauty, of prosperity, of wholeness. Interestingly enough, one of the things that I prayed about for this message was that I would be aware of the coincidences in my life and what was happening. I'm, well, there's a coincidence that I didn't plan. I do daily readings every morning, and you know, some of you know that I was gifted with all of these old Science of Mind magazines from the 50s and 60s, and I adore looking back and seeing what that writer said. So I'm reading a 1956 version of the Science of Mind magazine. I know that that's before some of you were even an idea in your parents' minds, but nevertheless, 1956, and today, in the 1956, oh, here it is right here, 1956. And on today's reading, it quotes my favorite quote. And you know what it is. Well, some of you know. It quotes the, so it's the 16th. The title is Friendly, Not Hostile. And from Ernest's quote, it's on page 298 of the textbook, and it begins like this. Refuse to see the negative side of anyone. Blah, blah, blah. I didn't bring my glasses up. But anyway, the gist of it, which is also, here's the rest of the coincidence. In the daily readings of the Science of Mind magazine, I mean the Science of Mind textbook, the daily readings, it was page 297 through 299, which includes this famous quote. The title of this section is Attracting Friends. And if you don't do anything else, get out your textbook and reread this. It's a page and a half, two and a half pages of pure truth. And it's such great advice, since part of this lesson is that we don't give advice, but Ernest did. And we don't give advice because we don't judge someone, and we don't pretend to know what is somebody else's highest good. We listen, and what is their heart calling for them to do or be? So, page 298, 299, really good lesson. Don't hold anything against anyone, because the rest of the quote of this is this: the God of love cannot hear the prayer of the one who fails to love. And since God is love, when we stop loving anyone, especially ourselves, our prayers, no matter what they're for, cannot work, because we're not in alignment with the truth of our own lives. The truth of our life is that we're love. So we're one with all, one with every person. There's a quote from one of the books that I don't have memorized, which I have memorized so well, the textbook. That Ernest, this comes from Creative Mind, and it's on page 35. He says this: we are not downtrodden, depraved, and miserable sinners, born in sin and conceived in iniquity and shame, some to go to heaven and some to hell, and all to the eternal glory of God. This is a lie. It always was and always will be. But as long as we believe in a lie, it seems to be present with us. Let me read that again. It's pretty important. We are not downtrodden, depraved, and miserable sinners, born in sin and conceived in iniquity and shame, some to go to heaven and some to hell, and all to the eternal glory of God. That should have triggered us right there. This is a lie. It always was and always will be, but as long as we believe in a lie, it seems to be present with us. In fact, it can't help but being present with us because it is done unto us as we believe. And in Love and Law, he says, if God knew sin, God would be a sinner. We weren't born in sin. And when we are working with others, we are not prejudiced. I want to tell you a story that I came across. And I encourage you to find it and read it on your own because it's lovely. It's written so beautifully, but it's quite lengthy. And so I'm giving you a Reader's Digest abridged version. Okay. It's called A Matter of Prejudice. And it was written by a woman named Kate Chopin. Well, I think that's how you, or Chopin, depending. Well, anyway, it's about a woman named Madame Carambeau. And Madame Carambeau wanted it strictly understood that she was not to be disturbed by her grandson's birthday party. They carried her big rocking chair from one end of the gallery to the other that looked out over the garden. And she was a woman with many prejudices. She detested cats, dogs. I know, she is very likable. Cats, dogs, many, in fact, the author says, so many things you couldn't possibly list them all. But nevertheless, she went into some of the things that she hated. Hated white servants, children's noises. She despised Americans, Germans, and people of different faith other than her own. And anything not French had, in her opinion, little right to existence. Nevertheless, the children, her grandson's party was seemed to be having a good time, and she could hear their screams and as they were playing. And then all of a sudden, two of them burst into her room where she was sitting in her rocker, and the little fellow that was chasing the little girl tagged the little girl. The girl jumped in Madame's lap, threw her arms around her, and so suddenly here she has a child. Remember, she detests children, and she speaks to her in French, but of course the child doesn't understand French, tells her that she's not pleased, greatly annoyed, and tries to shoo her away. But in doing so, she puts her cheek to the child's cheek and realizes the child has a fever. Well, she's a very prejudiced woman, but she was once a nurse. And so that desire to be a nurse comes forth through her. And so it's almost magically her attitude changes toward this child. Now she becomes very kind, very loving, very caring, and she calls for her maid and gets the bed to be turned down and a nightgown found for this child who's burning up with fever. And she, of course, criticizes the American English parents of this child because they should have known that she was coming down with a fever, and puts the child to bed and writes a long note to the parents that she is looking after this child. And it must have been sufficient because although her daughter, whose son was having the party, was really afraid the parents wouldn't put up with having their child more or less kidnapped, they did. So it took a couple of days for the fever to break and for the child to start getting better. And in the meantime, the child is chattering away in English to this old woman that only speaks French, and by the way, can't stand the sound of the English language. Can't stand it. It annoys her, it bothers her. Remember, she's greatly prejudiced. But with the child, she felt kindness and compassion. She felt connection. And after the child went home, there'd been a seed planted. And amid the shoots of doubt and misgiving comes the flower of truth. The flower of truth. It was a beautiful flower, and it bloomed on Christmas morning. So on Christmas morning, Madame Carabot and her daughter got in the carriage to go to church, but she gave instructions to the driver not to go to their regular French cathedral, but go where the English people go to church on Christmas morning. Go where the Americans go. So he drove her to St. Patrick's Church on Camp Street. And meanwhile, it was an American quarter, someplace that she had never been in. But something's happened within her. The morning was a delicious one, soft and mild. The roses were all in bloom. This was in a place in New Orleans. And she ordered her driver to take her to her son's home, her son whom she hadn't seen for 10 years because he had married an American English-speaking woman. She came to his house. It was modern and very handsome, and it was well kept. And a white maidservant answered the door and admitted them. Madame didn't seem to mind. She handed her card with all the proper ceremony and followed with her daughter into the house. Not once did she show a sign of weakness, not even when her son Henri came and took her in his arms and sobbed and wept upon her neck, as only a warm-hearted Creole child could do. He was big, good-looking, honest-faced man with her tender brown eyes and his dead father's and firm mouth like his mother's. Young Mrs. Campbell came too, her sweet, fresh face transfigured with happiness. She led by the hand the little daughter, the American child whom Madame had nursed so tenderly a month before, never suspecting the little one would turn out to be more than an alien to her. And her daughter says, "What a lucky chance was, the fever. What a happy accident. And her mother says, Cecile, it was no accident. I tell you, it was Providence. They all drove back together to eat Christmas dinner in the big old house by the river. Madame held her little granddaughter upon her lap. Her son Henri sat facing her, and beside her was her daughter-in-law. Henri sat back in the carriage and could not speak. His soul was possessed by a pathetic joy that would not admit speech. He was going back again to the home where he had been born after a banishment of 10 long years. He would hear again the water beat against the green levee bank with a sound that was not quite the same as any other he could remember. But his wife chatted much and pleasantly in a French, however, that must have been trying to old Madame to listen to. I am so sorry, ma mère, she said, that our little one does not speak French. It is not my fault, I assure you. And she flushed and hesitated a little. It was Henri who would not permit it. That is nothing, said the Madame, amiably drawing the child close to her. Her grandmother will teach her French, and she will teach her grandmother English. You see, I have no prejudices. I am not like my son Henri, who was always a stubborn boy. Heaven only knows that he came by such a character. So the point is that the love that she exhibited, the love that was already in her, healed all that she was prejudiced about, revealed the truth. Because when we see the truth, when we see the truth, which is there's only one thing to see, then we're seeing through God's eyes, and we're seeing love in expression. And when we see love in expression, all things are healed. So, those of us who know a little bit about the Bible know that one of the famous experiences of Jesus was when the Pharisees are trying to get him to admit that he could judge people, and she brought him an adulteress. And in those days, adultery was punishable by stoning to death. And they were all ready to stone this woman, and Jesus said, "He who is without sin cast the first stone." And of course, no one was without sin, so no one cast the first stone. And he said to the woman, Jesus said to the woman, "Woman, has anyone judged you?" And she said, "No, my Lord." He said, "Neither have I. Go and sin no more." Go and sin no more. So that, I think, is what we say to each other, to ourselves. Go and sin no more. Go forth and speak only highly of yourself and others. Tell yourself the truth. You are loved, made in the image of love. You have a right to be here. Put your arms around yourself. Feel yourself. Hug yourself. They did this 150 years ago. And rock yourself like this. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful me. Repeat it. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful me, made in the image of God. I feel love. I am love. And so it is. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to pray. Diane's going to set us up.
Here we are at the perfect time and the perfect place, showing up with an open mind and all this space. apart. Here's an invitation to the center of the heart. Take my hand, here we go. What's the plan? We don't have to know. Take a breath, make a start. Welcome home to the center of the heart. In the center of the heart is only love. The action and activity of that divine presence that knows itself as wholeness, as truth, as beauty, as grace. So what I know in this moment is that that presence is in and through and as me, in and through and as each one here. And I speak my word for each one with an awareness that anything that doesn't fit, just simply let it go, let it wash over you. And know the truth and be set free. In this holy moment of now, I declare that just as I am enough. Just as I am, there is enough. I am cherished and adored and wholly wholesome. That my life is an expression of the divine life and therefore is filled with warmth and connection, with caring, with a consciousness of good and only good. I know that this one that is God in expression in me is that thing that connects me to other people, to other beings, to the planet, to the earth, to the trees, to all life, one with all life. Star stuff, made in the image and likeness of the divine. I get to choose. And today I choose putting my attention on well-being, on wholeness, and on the expression of that wholeness as life, as strength and power, and the flow of energy. I know truly that I'm ageless being, and that presence within me is expressing such a greatness by means of me. And not only am I the wholeness and the love that God is, but I am the abundance of that one. I accept a greater financial freedom than ever before, a greater abundance of all good. Every blessing is multiplied in my life because I have forgiven myself and all others. I've accepted love is the only answer. And I'm fully present with a heart that is open to the greatest possible good. I'm free in this moment. And furthermore, I know that the creativity of the divine is moving through me as wisdom, as new ideas, as creativity, as life itself. And I know that whatever new ideas come to me, they're coming for me. And everything needed in order to live a whole, complete, active, compensated life is already at hand. I simply say yes in a greater way. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, this is for me. Yes, this is enough. Yes, I'm so grateful. And so with gratitude filling my heart and mind and being for all that is, I simply place this word in God's hands, in the action of law. It is complete. And help me anchor it by saying with me,
And so it is.
Thank you so much, Reverend Heather. And please welcome back Melissa Suzanne.
This song you'll recognize is Waiting on the World to Change by John Mayer. I changed some of the lyrics around to let's stop waiting and let's be the change to kind of coincide more with our teaching. So I encourage you to sing along if you feel moved to do so. 1, 2. Me and all my friends were all misunderstood. We say we stand for nothing and there's no way we ever could. But we see everything that's going on with the world and those who lead it. Some just feel like they don't have the means to rise above and beat it. So they keep waiting, yeah, on the world to change. But let's stop waiting, yeah, and let's be the change. It's hard to be the system when you're standing at a distance. So let's stop waiting, yeah, and let's be the change. Yeah. If we had the power to bring our neighbors home from war, they would have never missed a Christmas, no more ribbons on their door. But when you trust your television, what you get is what you got. 'Cause when the only information, oh, they can bend it all they want. But let's stop waiting, yeah. Let's be the change. Stop waiting, yeah. Let's be the change. It's not that we don't care. Some just feel that the fight ain't fair. But let's stop waiting and let's be the change. So let's stop waiting, yeah, let's clap together. Let's be the change. We got to stop waiting, yeah, and let's be the change. 'Cause it's not that we don't care. Some just feel that the fight ain't fair. So let's stop waiting, oh yeah, and let's be the change. We got to stop waiting, yeah, and let's be the change. We got to stop waiting, yeah, yeah, and let's be the change. We sing, just be the change. You sing it, just be the change. Just be the change, yeah. Thank you so much. And once again, a round of applause for our musicians today. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you so much.
If the stewards would come forward, it's time for us to give our gifts, our tithes, our offering. And so please repeat after me. Divine love in me is the source of all supply. It blesses and multiplies all the good in my life. For this, I'm very grateful, and everything multiplies. And so it is.
And a special treat for you, an arrangement by Mr. Ed Cusby himself.
Ooh.
Our wonderful band, Ed Cusby. Just a little preview of something that's going to come up in August. All right, and let's get those kidlets in here.